I solemnly swear that I am up to no good.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 28 of Tales from Godric's Hollow. The future winner of the second annual Toys for Games Awards Best Spin-Off Podcast. I'm calling it right now, Matt. I'm calling my shot.
That's good.
I feel like we got something cooking here. I feel like this is an award-winning podcast. See, that's the beautiful thing, Matt. Once we win, we could just label this as an award-winning podcast.
Yeah, it's a little misleading because you're in charge of the awards. But yeah, we'll try.
Yeah,
we'll try.
I mean, look, we don't need to pull back the curtain completely. You know, it's the equivalent of, let's see, like a chef winning a clam chowder competition in 2007. And then working for a new restaurant 10 years later, and then saying, look, we have award-winning clam chowder. Well, maybe, you know, like, the restaurant may not have award-winning clam chowder, but at one point, someone there who was cooking the clam chowder did win an award for the clam chowder. So,
sure,
you know, technicalities abound, Matt. Regardless...
honestly, that just reminds me of we just went out to this restaurant the other night. We'd never been there before, and so they're giving us their whole spiel.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like the first thing you walk in the door and you see all these rotisserie chickens, and it's like, oh, that smells so good.
Sure.
And so their big thing is like wood-fired chicken.
Okay.
And so we sit down, of course, you know, have you been here before? Like, no. Well, I would recommend anything with the chicken. That's what we're known for. Like, okay, sounds good. And then she went on. It's like, yeah, we even won an award last year for the best wood-fired chicken. And I thought she was going to say, like, in Wisconsin or something. I'm like, no.
On the block.
Pretty close. In the Chippewa Valley.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Which is... Where I live, Eau Claire, and then there's Chippewa Falls just to the north of us.
Sure.
They're like the only two major cities, and then all tiny cities around us up in northern Wisconsin here.
Okay.
Like, that is the Chippewa Valley.
Sure. And then you have to factor in how many restaurants are actually doing wood-fired chicken.
Exactly. I'm like, who are you up against? Who? I mean, like,
let me see the list of your competitors.
I'm guessing is maybe like best chicken in the Chippewa Valley or something, but still, I mean, it's not a big competition, I think.
But regardless, they have award-winning wood-fired chicken, Matt.
Yes, they do.
Mm-hmm. See, exactly.
I mean, the chicken is good.
Right.
We've already been back there once.
Sure.
But
just like this podcast, this is a good podcast. People are already coming back for seconds, Matt.
Very true. Very true.
Whether or not we win an award, the people have spoken, and they like us. They really like us. And we couldn't thank them enough for that. Right, Matt?
Right.
This is, of course, Tales from Godric's Hollow. This is, for any new listeners out there who are super confused as to what we are doing here, podcasting, we're talking Harry Potter. We are taking a journey through the entire Harry Potter franchise, one book at a time, 2 chapters at a time, week by week. Matt, my co-host, the professor of the show. Wow, see, my intro is completely messed up here. Like, this is going to sound completely... I started talking about awards and chicken and clam chowder. We're just going with it, Matt.
Absolutely.
Matt's the professor here. He has watched and read Harry Potter more times than he could possibly count. He is the expert of the show. Matt Sonnenberg. Matt, welcome.
It's good to be here.
It is. I am Josh Brown. I am the other co-host. I am the muggle of the show. This is my first time adventuring through the wizarding world of Harry Potter. I've never read the books before. I've never seen the movies before. All of this is brand new to me. And apparently people like hearing my thoughts and wild, crazy conspiracy theories regarding what could possibly come next in the story. And the problem is, Matt, we're only reading 2 chapters at a time, right?
Yeah.
So I can't like get all wild and froggy and read through the whole book and then podcast every week and pretend like I know what's going on, because I don't. For
It's
one,
true.
I don't have time to read that much. I would love that much time. Although if you let me, I would probably find time. Let's be real.
Yeah, you would.
I would. So,
But I'm gonna stop you right there, actually, because you ran right into my first email here. So
which oddly enough, I know nothing about.
I told you I had an email at the beginning of the show, but you had no context for it.
No, never
so
do.
Job well done. Our first email comes from Rhonda, who is one of our newer Patreon subscribers. Head over to patreon.com/Tales from Godric's Hollow for more information on that. But she says, "Dear Josh," specifically Josh.
Ooh.
Something occurred to me yesterday as I caught up on a couple of podcasts. You were lamenting, as you tend to do, your inability to consume the chapters as quickly as you'd like.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I agree that it must suck to be forced to stop reading right at some pretty good cliffhangers for a week or so. There is something you are getting from these books that we as solitary readers did not. We read them quickly, in a lot of cases in one night. I would agree. We didn't bounce theories off anyone, and perhaps even read so quickly that we didn't even form any of our own. We knew in a few hours we would have all the answers. You, on the other hand, are savoring each book as none of us did. You're taking the time to digest each chapter and discuss it with a good friend. I think you are getting much more out of these books on your first reading of them than we ever did. And I just thought you might like to hear this. Unless we read them in a book club, we probably devoured them without really tasting them. It wasn't until later when we went back and delved deeper into them. I hope this makes you feel better as a late-blooming Harry Potter fan.
I have never honestly thought about it that way.
Yeah.
Because here I am, the last man on earth to never read or watch Harry Potter. And I feel like everybody is in on these giant secrets except me. And I am like struggling to like catch up, and it's a long go, Matt. It's we look at months out ahead for like the end of books. And I know
it's true.
It's going to be the end of the book before I get answers of what I'm actually looking for.
Yeah.
So but I've never looked at it. I've never thought about how I'm able to digest it and taste the book more so than you all once did when you first read them.
Yeah, because that's something I know I did, and when I was growing up reading these, you got the new book. I don't remember if they came out on weekdays or weekends or when books release. I don't know that kind of thing, but
Tuesdays? Is it with games and CDs?
Yeah, I don't know. Is there a standard release date for books?
Fridays,
who knows?
maybe? If anybody knows a
case,
standard release date for books, let us know. I'm curious now.
But yeah, I think I would usually like come home from school and start reading, and I'd just read all night. And if I made it through, great. Once the books got longer, either I stayed up really late, longer than I should have, or I had to read it in 2 days. But
sure.
It was never very long. I did not waste any time reading these books.
Right.
And she's right. That's how we read them.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean.
And same could be said for those that have just watched the films, because there are that group of people out there that have never read the books, but have seen all the movies. And watching the movies, you get an even more abbreviated version of the story being told. And you definitely don't have time to sit there and think about things.
Yeah, I mean, the movies being even more an abbreviated version of each book.
Mm-hmm.
And if you really wanted to, and I mean, I've done it, you can marathon the movies in a day or a weekend for sure.
Sure.
Like you can make it through all 7. And yeah, you're not sitting there thinking, you're just letting it come at your face. So,
man, I can't wait for the day when I can just sit there and marathon the movies one by one.
We'll get you there.
That's going to be a good weekend, Matt.
Yeah.
Years down the road, though. Years down the road.
It's true. It's true.
Well, thank you, Rhonda, for giving me a different perspective on this. I guess sometimes I probably sound a little bit whiny about having to go so slow. And I've admitted several times that this is my own fault. I have no one to blame but myself.
Yep.
But, of course, I have Matt to thank for getting me to this point to where I care about the fact in the first place. So it's a journey. We're all going on it. We're all coming from different directions and angles in this journey, but it kind of feels like we're all heading to the same place regardless of where we started. So
Yep.
it's a fun ride. We are currently reading through Prisoner of Azkaban, the third book in the series.
Yes.
This week, we are going to be covering chapters 13 and 14. Spoiler alert, Matt.
Yeah?
I only liked one of the chapters.
Really?
I only found one of the chapters interesting.
And now I'm not sure which one that is.
I'll just break it down for you right here.
Okay.
Watching the documentary Mudbloods,
Yep.
and understanding the game of Quidditch has given me a respect for Quidditch.
Yep.
But I don't think I find it that interesting in book form.
Okay.
I think Quidditch
and
just bores me to death because last week I talked about, I know the next chapter is going to be the Quidditch chapter of the book.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and I'm seeing the pattern. Every book there seems to be the Quidditch chapter, which is fine. It's serving a purpose, but I just don't think I like them very much.
Fair enough. Yeah. I in this book in particular, though, I will say the Quidditch chapter serves a couple of purposes. Not necessarily that will be revealed to you right away.
Oh,
but it's kind of the beginning of a lot of things. So
okay, fair enough.
It has more purpose than you realize.
Okay.
But I can understand if you don't enjoy reading about Quidditch, then yeah, this might seem a bit boring.
You know what the best thing about reading about Quidditch is?
Yeah?
Lee Jordan.
Yes.
The superstar of the Quidditch matches.
I knew you would love to see him back. Finally got him back.
So very well done. So let's go ahead and start with chapter 13. Gryffindor versus Ravenclaw?
Yes.
Allegedly?
Ravenclaw. They exist. In fact, we have two more characters that we haven't met yet that are both
talk.
in Ravenclaw.
They almost have enough for a full house, Matt.
Yep, we're getting there. So we meet Cho Chang.
Mm-hmm.
She is the Ravenclaw Seeker.
Mm-hmm.
And then a boy named Davies. We just have a last name for now. We will come across him again later, but he is the captain of the Ravenclaw team.
Okay. Later is in like these two chapters, or later in the story?
Well, and not really in these two chapters.
Okay, so I didn't miss anything then.
No, the only mention of him, I believe, is asking Wood and Davies to shake hands before the match.
Okay.
That it was just a brief mention, but I'll tell you now, he's not just another throwaway character.
Okay, but in these two chapters, he was very underutilized.
Yep, but he is another Ravenclaw.
Mm-hmm. Allegedly.
Yes.
Okay. Were there's only two characters? New characters?
Just the two.
All right. Well, I have a question regarding a new character.
Sure.
Gargoyle? Did I make that name up?
Being a person?
I think so. I'm pretty sure at the beginning of the chapter, they were talking about Scabbers biting Gargoyle. When the Weasley boys were all talking.
Yeah. No, he bit. It was either Crab or Goyle. Maybe
I thought the name was Gargoyle. It was early on, and it took me by surprise.
I think he must have been Goyle then. I don't know where you're getting the Gar from, but
because I think the twins were talking about the one time that Scabbers bit.
Yeah. They're trying to console Ron, telling him. He hasn't done that much. And then Ron came back with he bit Goyle for us once.
So it was just Goyle.
Yep.
In my head, I turned it into Gargoyle, and I got super confused because Goyle made sense to me in my head, but that's not what I heard.
Okay, and then there's one more mention. Fred says his finest hour. Let the scar on Goyle's finger stand as a lasting tribute to his memory. So if that's read very quickly, the scar on Goyle's finger,
maybe that's it.
Could turn into Gargoyle. I could see that.
I was trying to figure out. I was like, well, maybe it's just something that happens outside of the book that we don't know about, and it's just. And I was trying to place. I'm like, does anybody have a nickname of Gargoyle? Is there a ghost named Gargoyle? That doesn't make sense because rats.
Yeah. Like when you said Gargoyle, I figured you're maybe talking about like the what is it, the humpback witch or whatever, the statue that Harry uses to get into the secret passage.
Sure.
That's what I thought you're gonna go after. I'm like, well, that's not a real person.
No.
I don't know. Okay.
Yeah, in my head, I was turning Goyle into Gargoyle. So okay, disregard that.
Sounds good.
I was like, well, that's a new character. I think maybe.
I'm glad you keep me in check. Because honestly, sometimes I worry that I just read through these chapters and enjoy the story so much that I forget to write down names or forget that we haven't met someone yet.
Right.
Because I've done that so many times. I always have to go back and check my notes, and that's why I make physical notes so I can flip through them quickly and see. It's like, did I mention this person yet?
Right. Yeah.
But
fair enough. All right. Well, I'm just crazy in the story.
All right.
I appreciate that there is like a history and a lineage of like vintage broomsticks.
Yes.
Like they talk about them like old vintage cars,
Yep. They went rather in depth. Well, Madam Hooch did.
Mm-hmm. She loves her some broomsticks, doesn't she?
Yeah. And that kind of goes along with our theory of we talked about her either last week or a couple weeks ago. Like, what does she do at Hogwarts? She deals with brooms and Quidditch, so it would make sense that she kind of has an affinity for broomsticks.
Yeah,
and that's her thing. That's her area of expertise.
But I guess I just I know that they're coming out with like new broomsticks yearly at this point.
Yeah.
But I guess I don't work backwards in thinking about broomsticks to think that like how long has broomsticks been a thing to where like there were model names and specific brands and all that stuff.
Well, we've gotten a couple of the older models named already. Like I think she named a few more than we've heard before. Mm-hmm. But I mean, there's like the Clean Sweep 7 and the Comet 260, and I know when they didn't they play Quidditch once like at the Burrow back at Ron's house once, and they had to play with old broomsticks that they had laying around, and
yeah, I think they were practicing, but they had to stay low.
Yeah. So like we get mentions of these broomsticks from time to time, but they're the older models,
right?
They're not big and flashy, so.
But the way she was waxing poetically about them, like it made me like make that connection between like old classic cars, like
sure
when Ron and the boys are playing with them, at their house, it's just like, oh, those are like several years old or whatever. But like when she's like talking about the Silver Arrow broomstick, I'm thinking like, oh, that's a classic like 1950s broomstick, like
yes.
Like I don't know, like I finally made that connection that they go back a while and there are there's an affinity for older, well-made versions of broomsticks.
Yep.
So, cool little connection. I appreciate it.
Awesome.
Madam Hooch is kind of cracking me up a little bit. I do have a question, though.
Yep.
So, Harry's allowed to use this firebolt in a Quidditch match, right? And this firebolt is clearly way faster than any other broomstick that's going to be out there.
It's true.
And, we've seen Malfoy kind of buy his way into the Quidditch team because his dad bought, all the new broomsticks and all this stuff. I feel like having an exceptionally better broomstick is kind of unfair. Like, You would think that they would have like regulation broomsticks to even the playing field a little bit, make it more about the people on the broomsticks as opposed to the equipment themselves.
Yes and no. I think the best broomstick in the wrong hands is still not going to be. I mean, think about it. You can't just give Neville the best broomstick and say, "Oh, he's going to be the greatest player ever."
Yeah, well, I mean, we find out that you can't give Neville anything, so
it's true. But my point being, it like we see in this match even that Cho kind of finds ways to keep up or distract Harry, or like he actually has to try yet in order to outdo her.
Right.
He has to come up with a plan. We learn dives are his specialty.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't know that before, but he had to use his basically his secret move, his special move, to lose her.
Right.
Even though she was on a far inferior broomstick.
Sure. Now, but imagine they were on the same broomsticks, right?
Yeah.
Then it's more about the skill of the players.
I mean, more so, but I think it's already kind of implied that Harry is the better flyer, and yes, he has a little bit of advantage with the broomstick, but Cho was still putting up a fight.
Right. I don't know. I just see it as like having a corked bat in baseball, Yeah. Like you can't do it. Everybody has to have the same kind of regulation baseball bats. Like there are specific guidelines that your equipment has to follow and fall into to make sure everybody's kind of on the same playing field. Like one player or team can't throw money at equipment in order to be the best.
Well, I think that's something that varies between amateurs and the pros too. Because
I guess maybe that was my question, was going forward. Like, sure, I quit it. At Hogwarts when it's just the kids. It's competitive, but it's not professionals. I could see it being tolerable that everybody has their own broomsticks or whatever.
Yeah.
But like in the pros, like the pro Quidditch league, does everybody are they required to have certain equipment or like?
Well, I think just as you go up that ladder, there's going to be more restrictions put in place to keep things at a more equal level. I think this certain situation at Hogwarts right now this year is really an anomaly, because what kid is going to have the money to buy a firebolt?
That's
like
true.
Harry, as much as he wanted it, wasn't going to do it by himself.
Sure.
He thought about it every day, sure, but he wasn't going to put out that kind of money.
Right.
And you didn't see the Slytherin team; they didn't all get upgrades to the firebolt. Like it was just not something that's going to happen.
Sure.
In a typical year, any given year. I think even the Slytherin team all getting the Nimbus 2001s last year was an anomaly.
Yeah.
And that was Malfoy buying his way onto the team.
Sure.
He's not doing it every year, but it just, and it all really stemmed out of jealousy, really.
That's
so I think it's something they don't worry about as much at the lower levels. And as you get up there, it might be more regularly enforced, but at the same time, I think the professional teams also have the funds that if they wanted to, they could do something about it.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm just a big proponent of, finding out who's better skill-wise and talent-wise as people as opposed to equipment.
Sure.
In anything, not just Quidditch, but
I mean, I think you could make the argument that Cho might be the better player.
Yeah.
How closely she kept up with him and,
sure.
and made him work for it, even with the better equipment.
Right. I mean, we have to remember Harry kind of just fell into Quidditch, Like,
yeah.
he didn't spend his entire life dreaming and thinking and watching and studying.
He
and
didn't touch a
practicing.
broomstick till he was 11.
Yeah. So there's something to be said there. Real glad that Madam Hooch is asleep. It's not like she has any important job like keeping an eye on the famous Harry Potter or anything to do. So yeah. Disappointing me, Madam Hooch. Disappointing. You have one job.
It's true.
Yeah.
That was her one job.
Thankfully, nothing terrible happened, but I don't know. It's not good. It's not a good sign, Matt, when the professors are asleep on the job, when they clearly are instructed that it is of the utmost importance to make sure Mr. Potter stays safe and sound.
Yeah, you'd think they'd have a keep me awake spell or something.
Something. I don't know. Crookshanks.
Yeah.
Odd
Wandering
place for
around
Crookshanks
outside
to be.
the castle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, they kind of explain it. Ron kind of explains it as just the cat just free roaming and, doing its thing. It's weird, Matt. I am not. There is something going on with Crookshanks, and it's driving me nuts.
Uh-huh.
Because this is just a little reference, just a little reminder that Ron is still mad about Crookshanks, and Crookshanks is still kind of out there doing weird things. Man, I don't know. It seems like Crookshanks was like out watching or following or, just kind of suspicious.
That's the feeling you got?
Yeah. Not that it was out doing its own thing, but like of
that is
all
specific, like, are you going like watching Harry?
possibly, or Ron or Ron. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. It doesn't feel right that of all the places that they could have been, that they encountered Crookshanks. Like that. We've discussed how big, the area and surrounding area of Hogwarts is.
Yeah.
Just to come across like just one cat just out of nowhere.
Well, I've always kind of wondered, where is Crookshanks the rest of the time? Does she stay up in the castle the entire time, or like up in Hermione's room?
Don't know.
We don't see it a lot of the time.
Be nice.
So
to know. We also don't see Crookshanks with Lupin. Just saying.
But we did once.
Still doesn't feel right. I don't know.
Okay.
Just it was just an off reference that felt like it was there just to remind the reader of, hey, look over here type of thing.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just a smoke and mirror trick, Matt. Maybe they're trying to make me worry about Crookshanks this whole time, and it turns out to be nothing.
It's very possible.
I don't trust JK at this point at all. So let's just put that out there. But just odd. Very peculiar.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I'll give you that.
So the big Quidditch match.
Yes.
Lee Jordan.
You love him.
He's my guy. I love me some Lee Jordan. He is the most fascinating character that we don't know much about.
Sure.
The dynamic with McGonagall and him,
yes,
is hilarious because I feel like she takes it upon herself to make sure that he stays on track, but I think that's almost an impossible job at the same time, and she knows that.
Yeah, but she does not give up. She's relentless.
But it's not like here's the thing. Here's what I love about him is he goes off on these tangents, right? He's supposed to be calling the action of the Quidditch match, which things are happening. Everybody's kind of watching it anyway. I don't think it's being broadcast like on a radio or anything. I think that's just like a loudspeaker for the people in the audience, right?
Yeah,
that's how I understand it.
Just live commentary of the game.
Okay, so it's not like
watching.
It's not for people that aren't there or anything like that.
Not as far as I know.
Right. So I guess what I'm saying is he kind of understands that the people are watching the same thing he is, and he could focus on like the key events throughout the match, but he needs to sprinkle in some color there. He doesn't want to just say
exactly.
They go back and forth.
He doesn't have a broadcasting partner, so he's sitting there doing the color and
the play-by-play.
Exactly. He's doing it all, and he just slips in a lot more of the color commentary.
Yeah.
More than McGonagall would like. And
he's a storyteller. He was just going on and on about this broomsticks and talking about and like giving the history. Like it was so hilarious. I loved it, and just
can
McGonagall.
See why Fred and George like hanging out with him.
Oh yeah, big time. And just like the thought of just McGonagall just sitting there and being like, Lee, for the love, just please stay focused. And he's like, I got this, Teach. I got this.
And
he's not missing the action. He's not like, talking about what's for lunch or anything like that. Like he's invested in the match, but he's trying to spice it up for the audience because again, they're watching the same thing he is, So he doesn't need to tell them every single detail about everything going on, just the key stuff.
Yeah, but I mean, you think about a football game. Mm-hmm. We got our play-by-play announcer, and he gives us every little detail.
Right.
Especially, I mean, obviously it's different when you're listening on the radio.
Sure.
But I just love listening to those guys.
Yeah.
Now, at least here in Wisconsin, we have great radio.
Oh, I bet.
I don't know. I don't know if you've ever had the chance to listen to it, but
not Wisconsin radio, no.
Yeah, sadly. Love our announcers. Absolutely love them.
Yeah.
In any case, but even the play-by-play guys on TV, like they're like, he's at the 10, he's at the 5 touchdowns. Like, well, yeah, I just saw that. You didn't have to tell me.
Sure. Yeah.
But they do it anyway.
Right.
So,
like maybe for the benefit of like maybe you're in the kitchen and you're listening to it, or
sure,
maybe you're preoccupied with something else and you could just listen to it as background noise type.
Exactly. I think a lot of people do it as background, and so then you hear the announcer's voice perk up, and it's like, oh, something exciting's happening.
But if you're there live in the audience, like I don't know how many live sporting events you go to, Matt, but like even like an NBA game or something like that, like they don't give you the play-by-play. They'll just, if someone makes a shot, they'll say, so and so made a shot, 2 points, or a foul or whatever.
Sure.
Like they recap what just happened. They don't say somebody is dribbling up and then they pass it and like you don't hear that as a live spectator.
But you also don't get color as a live spectator.
That's
either.
true. And that's why Lee Jordan is special, because he understands the beauty of merging the two to make it more entertaining for the live audience.
Yes.
He's gifted more than he knows.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't know if there's a bigger story out there for Lee Jordan in this universe. I don't know, where he goes throughout the series, but I would definitely be interested to like follow the broadcasting career of Lee Jordan.
I was gonna say, you would pay to see the Lee Jordan show.
I would, yes. maybe that's what I'm missing. Like maybe like I said, this chapter wasn't super. It didn't grab my attention up until Lee Jordan, and then like I perked right up. And I'm like, this is what I paid to see here.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
So I did going through the match. We were learning a little bit about the Gryffindor team, or the Ravenclaw team. Sorry. Mm-hmm. And we get a note that Cho is the only girl on the team.
Right.
That got me thinking. I know I've made the comment before that it's kind of odd that the Gryffindor team is almost split.
Mm-hmm.
They have 3 girls on their team.
Right.
They're all chasers, but we have 3 girls. And then Ravenclaw, you have 1 girl.
Mm-hmm.
I believe we've met the entire Slytherin team.
Right, and there's 1 girl?
I don't think so. I think they're all guys.
Oh, that's right. She's not.
We've met a Slytherin girl, but she's not. She's not on the team.
Yeah.
And Hufflepuff, I don't think we got. I mean, we don't know too much about them. but there wasn't really any mention of them.
Sure. Specifically,
So,
yeah.
like it's really kind of odd, it seems, at Hogwarts to have girls on the team, actually.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah. Like with Slytherin, I kind of get the idea that that's just the way they run. Like the guys are bigger and
I could definitely see that with Slytherin as the boys club.
Yeah.
But you know, like for the other houses, like it's kind of like the luck of the draw, you know, as far as the kids that you get and which house they're sorted into.
That's true too. I mean, you gotta work with what you're dealt, but at the same time, when you only need, what do we say, 7 positions, 7 players.
Yeah.
Like you figure that you should be able to fill that out of, because I mean, I guess typically they say first years don't make the house team because you don't have a broomstick and all that. But
right.
Other than that, you have 6 years worth of students to choose from.
Sure.
So you should be able to find 7 people.
Yeah, but you know, that's not to say that, you know, based on the students that you have, like for Ravenclaw per se, if the house existed, like, you know, like how we don't know like the distinction of like when the kids are sorted into Ravenclaw, you know, you have boys and girls, but you know, who's to say that, you know, more girls or not will be interested in Quidditch or want to even play Quidditch, you know, as opposed to like the next year, you may get like 3 more Ravenclaw all girls that are just like, yeah, we love Quidditch. This is what we're all about, you know?
Yeah. And that's very well what could happen with like the Gryffindor team.
Mm-hmm. But the Slytherin, I think you're right. I think that's like 100%. This is boys only, you know?
Yeah.
I can see that from them.
Just the style they play.
Yeah.
I mean, even the Slytherin girls we meet, though, do seem a bit rough and tumble.
Sure.
Like they could fit in just fine. They could play along with the boys, but it just feels right that Slytherin team is all boys.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've seen, you know, plenty of very strong female characters from Gryffindor already.
Sure.
You know, like that house kind of breeds the leaders, the overachievers. So you would think that would trickle down into Quidditch too, you know, male and female. So
fair enough.
I made this comparison in my notes here, Matt. Harry Potter is like the Harlem Globetrotter of Quidditch. Like he's very good and kind of does it without much effort.
Sure.
You know.
Yeah, he's mastered the basics very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, it's not necessarily that he's having fun with it, but he's able to do things that others can't more easily.
Right.
More often.
Sure. And like all of his failures in Quidditch are pretty much just because of like sabotages.
Yeah.
And unfortunate events.
Seems to happen a lot, but yes.
I mean, the story of his life, right? You know?
Yeah.
But it's never like he's hasn't been good. You know, it's always a specific reason why something goes wrong when he's playing Quidditch. Other than that, like, he's a superstar out there. He's LeBron James.
Like he just experienced his first loss a couple of weeks ago.
Right.
And that was because he was knocked out. He was out cold.
Sure.
Like, yeah, okay. There's a legitimate excuse, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, he's broken his arm and still won. He's all sorts of stuff.
Right. I mean, this match, he's casting the Patronus spell.
Yep.
Just shortly before catching the snitch, kind of all in one motion.
Pretty
like
much
a boss, and like it's like second nature to him, you know.
Very true.
Very, very fascinating.
It especially since he's not a fully trained wizard.
Right.
He's not. He still has to practice his spells,
Mm-hmm.
so he's not fully comfortable with them. On top of it, he's trying to cast a spell that he's just learned and still doesn't fully feel comfortable with. He's relying on, well, I've kind of done this, but I think it's almost kind of that adrenaline moment,
Right.
where just in the heat of the moment, things are going on. He's not thinking about it too much, but he knows what needs to be done, and so he does it, and it works.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Fascinating though. Fascinating that he was, that he pulled that off pretty much flawlessly. You know.
Yeah.
Of course, he thought he was taking care of some Dementors. Turns out he was not.
Yep.
Nice try, Malfoy.
It probably helped a little bit that they weren't actual Dementors.
Right.
But I still like the quote from Lupin that came up to him and said that was quite some Patronus.
Yeah.
So, like, something happened.
Right. It wasn't written as, like, the typical little silver flash that happens from his wand when he was practicing it before.
Yeah.
Like, this time it felt like it was a full-on something big happened.
Yeah, yeah.
But, of course, it was Malfoy and friends doing the old sit on top of the shoulders and pretend to be a taller person routine that we've seen in cartoons pretty much our entire lives.
Yeah.
Glad to see them trying that.
It didn't turn out too well for him, though.
No. So my question about this.
Yeah.
The Patronus spell. Does it not hurt people? Or does it not hurt them too much? Or did Harry not put everything into it enough to hurt somebody? Like, I guess I'm not quite sure about the specifics of the spell itself.
Right. And
I mean, I know it like keeps Dementors at bay, but how does that affect, people?
Well, so you know what we discussed last week. The Patronus is a positive force.
Mm-hmm.
And we use it against Dementors because that's what they want to feed on.
Right.
They want to feed on that positive force, so that's going to keep them at bay because it's not going to hurt the person casting it. Then they're just going to feed on that spell.
Right.
So when you think about it like that, it's not really going to hurt other wizards or other people.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of just like a force of impact of the spell. Then, like, there's a little more to it. There are other things you can use the Patronus spell for.
Okay.
And we'll find that out eventually.
So is it,
and
would
it'll make
just
a little
like the force of it would like the pressure of it would like could knock somebody over type of thing?
Essentially that's the best way to think about it for now.
Okay.
Yeah. That's more or less what happened here. It will probably make a little more sense as we get further in when we learn more about Patronus and specifically what Harry can do with it. But
Matt.
I don't want to ruin too much for you because
fair enough.
I enjoy it. It's
Okay.
a good spell. But
so Malfoy and friends weren't hurt. They were just kind of knocked down by it.
Yeah,
They don't need to go see Madame Pomfrey or anything.
They were sitting there in their robes. They got knocked over, and yeah, their egos are bruised more than anything.
Sure. Although Malfoy's going to milk it, and he's going to be,
Sure.
He's probably not going to be able to play Quidditch now because of his injury, and they're probably going to have to forfeit, and he's going to suck it up like he always does.
Sure.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I just wasn't clear on, like, the damage or... Because, like, everybody just kind of commented, like, it was nice to see the spell done so well, but no one was like, oh my god, you just, like, killed Malfoy. Like, how... Like, nobody was super concerned that, like... that they were hurt or anything, so I guess I wasn't sure.
I think if it's even possible, which I would guess that it's not possible, but if it were possible to kill someone with it, it would be really hard.
Or
It's
even
not
like
that-
seriously hurt, you know.
Yeah, it's not that type of spell. It's more of a defensive spell than anything.
Okay. Nobody came rushing to Malfoy's side.
Well, you see, that's the thing. I think part of it's hard to judge this specific situation because it's Malfoy.
Yeah, that's true.
Like Malfoy is that student that I think even the teachers don't really care what happens to him, but they can't actually say that or do anything. Like, but he's that kid. It's like, oh, he fell over. He tripped down the stairs. Oops. Okay, he's not dead yet, so we'll be all right. But yeah,
Snape would be concerned.
maybe. I wonder sometimes.
Yeah, that's true, I guess. Fudge flies.
Fudge flies.
Tell me about
Sure.
some fudge flies, Matt.
We don't know much about them.
Will we ever?
No, probably not. They're just a mysterious treat.
These are the new flower worms.
Yeah, I guess. You
Okay.
could say that.
Great name, though.
Yeah. You want some, don't you?
Yeah, curious. I'm
Yeah.
intrigued. As I am with most of these weird little things that pop up.
Yep.
That I'll never know anything about, Matt.
Well, there, now you can start writing your own fanfic.
Flower worms and fudge flies.
There you go.
Wow. Say that 3 times fast.
Good luck.
All right. So the big thing of the chapter, Sirius Black.
Before we get there,
Oh, okay.
I'm going to take a minute to jump on our Muggle poll for the week.
Yeah, good call.
So our Muggle poll, having an entire chapter on Quidditch got me thinking more about Quidditch, and we finally have kind of met all 4 Quidditch teams, specifically all 4 captains of the Quidditch team.
Mm-hmm.
So my question is, which Quidditch captain would you most like to play for?
So I mentioned before the show that I had a question about this Muggle poll.
Yeah.
When you posted it, I panicked a little bit, Matt.
Yeah.
Because I thought something big happened between all 4 of the Quidditch captains. And I was questioning how much of the chapter I was not paying attention to, because I was like, I don't remember all 4 of these characters being in this chapter. I don't remember an event that brought all 4 of them together or anything like that. Why is Matt naming all 4 of these people? I'm super confused.
Yeah, not so much.
Okay.
We in this chapter we only got mention of Wood and Davies. So Oliver Wood from Gryffindor.
Sure.
I'll give you his name now. Roger Davies from Ravenclaw.
Okay.
It was earlier in the book when the first Quidditch match that we got that was interrupted by the Dementors when they were playing Hufflepuff.
Mm-hmm.
We got mention of Cedric Diggory,
Yes.
and we've met the Slytherin captain Marcus Flint a
Right.
couple of times already.
Sure.
So, yeah, they weren't all specifically in this chapter.
Okay. I panicked.
Yeah.
I seriously worried that I missed something huge.
Yeah, nothing to worry about there. So yeah, I just want to know which would you like to play for? That they all have slightly different qualities.
Mhm.
I mean they do each belong to one of the 4 houses.
Right.
So I mean you could take it that way,
Sure.
but I will have to give it to it. Some people know more about these characters than you do.
Oh.
Because these characters stick around for a little while.
Okay.
But if you had to pick right now, what'd you go with?
I mean, I was leaning towards Cedric. I mean, fellow Hufflepuff, you know.
That's kind of what I figured.
Yeah. However, Matt.
Yeah?
I appreciate Oliver Wood.
Yeah?
I appreciate his drive and his motivation and his determination to be, not just to win, but to do it as a team, you know?
Sure.
he doesn't see himself as the superstar, and he genuinely has the team's best interest. As hard as he pushes them, as hard as he works them in practices day in and day out, it's for the betterment of the team.
And I like that you bring that up, because like you think about that. I think Wood, at least of these four here, is the only captain that's a keeper.
Right.
And you think about that in terms of like soccer or something. How many captains are the keeper?
Sure.
That you don't see that too often.
Not married. Oh, what's Davies? Do we know?
I don't
he's not
think
the
it's
Seeker.
mentioned here. Yeah, he's not Seeker because that's Cho.
Yeah.
But I don't think he's the keeper. Or well, it's definitely not mentioned, but I don't think he is.
Okay. But yeah, I appreciate his attitude, you know.
Yeah.
It is very driven. It is very competitive. You know, it definitely isn't a style for the casual Quidditch players. But when it comes down to it, like he does greatly care about his team, every single one of them, and succeeding as a team, and doing everything as a team, you know. So
yeah,
I like that mentality.
Awesome.
I wouldn't mind playing for him.
I will say, so Davies is a chaser.
Okay.
And so is Flint.
Okay.
Yep. And we do know Diggory was the Seeker as well.
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah, much flashier positions than Wood plays. So.
Right. Yeah, because it doesn't feel like the keepers have much of a chance. You know?
No.
There's a lot of points scored in those matches.
It's true. They're only there for defense, and yeah, they get scored on a lot.
Yeah. Poor guys. Who would you play for?
Honestly, I would go with Diggory as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, he's my guy out of those four, definitely.
Fair enough. What do people say?
The people were pretty torn between Wood and Diggory, sitting at 44% for each. Had a measly 7% for Davies and a surprising 5% for Flint.
Oh, poor Slytherin.
Yeah. I did, however, like Atari Alex's comment. I'm assuming he voted for Davies after this comment. He says, Wood is insane, Flint is a jerk, and Cedric sparkles in the light too much. So what you might not know, because you haven't met him yet really, but
He's a vampire from Twilight?
Yes.
Is he really?
Yes.
No, tell me I'm joking.
No.
He's a vampire?
Well, no, he's not a vampire, but the actor that plays him.
Oh, is from Twilight?
He's a vampire.
Oh,
Twilight.
wow, okay.
Yes.
You had me very concerned that there was a vampire in Hogwarts, and vampires actually glitter in Hogwarts also.
Cedric Diggory is a wizard. Nothing to worry about there.
Okay.
But
actor-wise.
Yes.
I see what
actor-wise.
All right.
Yeah.
Also, I think it's safe to say that one cannot ever assume what Atari Alex is thinking. So just because he laid out all three of those doesn't mean that we could assume that he went with Davies. Maybe he likes the glittering vampire.
Fair enough.
Good question, though, Matt.
I was happy with that one. Some weeks it's kind of tough, but
usually you pull all of the stuff from the chapters, though.
I try,
or at least like pull things that like I would definitely remember from previous things.
Yep.
This one was a little bit more tough. It threw me for a loop, but I appreciate it nonetheless.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So now on to Sirius Black, as you were saying.
Yes. Sirius Black is back.
He is.
He attacks Ron, or tries to, maybe.
Something, yeah.
I'm not sure.
And this is something I find weird too. I don't know if it's a British thing, but I personally have never had a 4-poster bed.
Right.
And I've never had a bed with curtains all the way around.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, I guess it gives them privacy, but in my mind too, when I was an 11-year-old boy, I didn't care.
Sure.
But like I didn't need that much privacy while I was sleeping.
Right.
Like it just seems weird to me. And a couple of times now, I guess we're seeing it come into play. So like Sirius Black can rip the curtain and make a scene.
Mm-hmm.
But it just like I don't know.
Yeah.
The 4 posters with curtains. That's something in my mind, I guess, is always the dream of little girls having the princess room and the 4-poster bed and
the Disney princess,
that type of thing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's never been my dream to have that or anything. And so, but for whatever reason, it seems to be the standard at Hogwarts.
Maybe you just don't know how great it is because you've never had it, Matt. Maybe you just lay down and be like, this is my area, this is my space, and this is fantastic. You never know.
Okay.
Funny you mentioned Sirius ripping and tearing the sheet, though.
Yes.
Funny choice of words, Matt.
Yeah?
Mm-hmm. Ripping, tearing, he tore and shredded the painting. There's a lot of shredding and ripping and tearing going on here.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know. It's very specific characterizations about his attacks each time.
But at the same time, Ron did say he saw him with a knife.
Yeah, it's true. I don't know. It just, again, Matt, there's more going on that I just, I'm on to JK just a little bit here. She uses specific ways to describe things for a reason, you know.
Sure.
So I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there, and we'll get into it in the next chapter.
Okay.
But I have some definite suspicions about what Ron saw, or thinks he saw, or remembers seeing.
Okay.
It's just it's all iffy to me.
Yeah. It definitely becomes a fish story after a while, but yeah, we can get into that.
Yeah. Percy and that stupid headboy badge. What in the world makes him think that it's necessary to put it on his pajamas in the middle of an emergency, a crisis situation?
Love that.
That's all he thinks about.
Well, I don't think he necessarily put it there because of the emergency. I think I'm pretty sure he puts it on whatever he's wearing at the time, and so he goes to bed with that thing on.
Yeah, I feel like he's just holding it. Like he goes to sleep holding it, you know?
Sure.
Just grasping it. So probably so the twins don't steal it and hide it. Let's be real here.
And make it say Big Head Boy again.
Yes. Yeah. But just every time Percy's his own special little thing, you know.
He is definitely.
He's fascinating, and I don't feel like we spend enough time with him to really get down to the minutia of what makes Percy tick. But there's something there. There's some fascinating things going on inside that kid's head. So we learn that Sirius Black, or we're told, was there. He got into the dorm. How'd he get there? Well, he had to go through the painting, right?
Yeah. He had the password.
Sir Cadogan.
Sir Cadogan.
You have one job, my friend.
But he did his job.
He did it, And I'm so glad you said that, because we'll get to it in the next chapter. Or we could get to it now. He ends up getting fired for this whole thing, right?
Yep.
Because he let Sirius Black through.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, he had all the passwords. Like, that's the only requirement needed to go through the painting, is to have the passwords.
Yeah.
Whether it's written, whether it's, memorized. Like, he lets Neville through back and forth because Neville writes them down. Neville's having a hard time remembering these passwords. Granted, that's Sir Cadogan's fault. But, I would assume he allows Neville to read them off of his note cards that he has to use them to get in.
Yeah.
So, technically, like, the only thing needed to get in is having the passwords. If you have the correct passwords, and he had a whole week's worth, like, Sir Cadogan didn't do anything wrong here.
It's true.
So I feel bad for the guy.
Yeah, a little bit, but it's the same thing. Like, compare this situation to hacking a computer or hacking into someone's bank account. If you get the password, they're going to let you in. Right. That's the only thing standing in your way.
Yeah.
Is having the password. Mm-hmm. So yeah, he did his job.
Right.
But once something goes wrong, you're not just going to leave everything as is.
Right.
You are going to reset your password. You're going to get a new credit card. You're going to fire the security IT guy, or something like something's going to happen. Something's going to change. Mm-hmm. And so that's what happened here.
Yeah. As the chapter was winding down and it was revealed that, Sirius Black came through, he had all the passwords, they were written down, and McGonagall, I think it was, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, she was like, who would be stupid enough to just write down all, like, as that sentence was happening, like, I screamed out Neville. I'm like, Neville! Of course it's Neville.
Well, it's okay. Now I'm starting to wonder, did you catch this? Like, we knew this was a very real possibility already from last week.
What?
I didn't bring it up last week, but the list of passwords.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember reading about that last week?
No.
So Ron and Harry were coming back to Gryffindor Tower.
Okay.
And they turned into the corridor to Gryffindor Tower and saw Neville Longbottom pleading with Sir Cadogan, who seemed to be refusing him entrance. I wrote them down, Neville was saying tearfully, but I must have dropped them somewhere.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah, I did not catch that.
Yep. Little detail.
Yeah.
Little detail.
Uh-huh.
But it was mentioned last week that he wrote them down and he lost them.
Yeah. Okay, so kind of Neville's fault, like most things. But at the same time, where would Neville have been that he would have dropped the passwords,
Sure.
I didn't know of any trip to Hogsmeade, that he would have dropped them at Hogsmeade. So you'd think, like, logically, first inclination is he just dropped them around the castle somewhere.
Yeah.
Getting his books out or rifling through his pockets and dropped them or whatever the case is. Like, one could assume that most likely he dropped them somewhere in the castle.
Most likely that's where he spends most of his time.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I guess my point is, like, there wasn't, like, this grand explanation that, like, he was at Hogsmeade and, had, like, a bag of things and somebody bumped into him and he dropped all of his stuff and he picked up everything that he thought that he dropped, or, it wasn't laid out as, like, he was anywhere else.
No, there was nothing like that. I guess, if anything, I mean, I would throw in the bag that we don't know that he actually dropped them.
True.
He said he couldn't find them.
Sure.
And he's assuming that he lost them and dropped them somewhere. But what's to say they weren't stolen from
Okay.
wherever he had them.
That's true. Now I'll give you that. But that also kind of furthers my point that I'm trying to make is if Sirius Black had them,
Yep.
that means one could logically suspect that he was already in the castle. I mean, we know he was in the castle earlier. But That means he's still around at some point. Whether he's thieving the paper from Neville at some point, or he found them on the ground, or whatever the case is, if all this transpired within the castle, that means Sirius Black has been in the castle, for that week recently. Not
Yeah. I mean, not that he's necessarily been there the whole time. I wouldn't say because every time they get wind of it, the professors search the entire castle.
Yeah, but they searched the entire castle. I'll give you that.
Yep.
But do we know that Sirius Black is not capable of disguising himself as something else or someone else?
Suppose it's a possibility.
I mean, logically, if he's hanging out in the castle, at least within the last week enough to get these weeks, this current week's list of passwords, he wouldn't be walking around the halls as Sirius Black.
Well, I mean, it could be in the middle of the night. Because
Sure.
we've seen people sneak out in the middle of the night because all the kids are supposed to be in bed and the halls are basically deserted. There are very few. The professors, for the most part, are in bed. I mean, you get Filch and Mrs. Norris patrolling the hallways at night. That's about it. But even with all their secret passages and all that type of thing, they still can't be everywhere all the time.
Yeah.
If Harry can sneak around the castle, Sirius Black could sneak around the castle.
Sure. It doesn't feel right. It feels, I don't know. It doesn't feel right. I'm getting this vibe of him able to transform or disguise himself as something else or someone else. Something or someone.
Okay.
That's the vibe I'm getting, Matt. Because that would be super easy to snag a piece of paper from Neville if you look like something else that Neville was not afraid of or not suspicious of,
Sure.
familiar with, let's say. So, that kind of leads into chapter 14.
Chapter 14, titled Snape's Grudge. And as far as my notes tell me, we do not have any new characters.
I second that notion.
All right.
Yes. Now this chapter was jam-packed, Matt. I felt going into it, I felt pretty good. Now, aside from the title of the chapter, which always throws me off,
Sure.
I felt like we were getting to the point where puzzle pieces were going to start fitting in together.
Yeah.
And I will tell you, by the end of this chapter, I may be the most frustrated I've ever been reading these books. Because we're getting dangerously close to the end of this book.
Sure. Yeah. I was just looking at the other, like I think we have less than a month left in this book, so like 3 or 4 weeks.
Yeah. And there is so much to figure out.
Sure.
But when we're done talking about this chapter, I want to recap every loose end that's still out there that needs to be resolved, because I am going crazy. Like when we got to the end of it, it was even like Val even made a point to mention that she had to stop and try to figure out how things progressed from the end of this chapter because of how much more stuff that needs to happen.
Yes.
She was like, I don't know how this all fits into like the rest of the book.
I've read this before, but man.
Which is super exciting for like the end, like this final stretch, but
Yep.
oh, there's just so much. And nothing got resolved at all, Matt.
Not so much, no.
I think there's even more questions now after this chapter.
I believe it. It'll be good.
Yeah. So we talked a little bit about Sirius Black already, and my theory that he may be shape shifting of some sort.
Sure.
I don't know how that works, but I just, for one, there was mention that they're going to kind of like retrain everybody at Hogwarts to like memorize what Sirius Black looks like to be on the lookout for him.
Yeah.
As if Sir Cadogan saw Sirius Black and just let him through when he should have like known that he shouldn't have let him through.
Yeah. My favorite part of this sequence, though, was Professor Flitwick.
Mm-hmm.
He was teaching the front doors,
right? Yeah.
To identify Sirius Black. Teaching the front doors.
Right.
I'm like, wait a minute. This isn't normal.
Right.
As far as we know, they have normal front doors, but apparently he can charm them enough to teach them to not look for someone. Not open for someone, I should say.
Right. So, like, I guess it's never really perfectly explained whether or not Sir Cadogan actually saw Sirius Black as we know him.
It's true.
Maybe he just let somebody through.
Well, no. I would take that back, because doesn't he say, like, Professor McGonagall, I think, specifically asks him, did you see Sirius Black? And he says yes. And she's like, why'd you let him in? It's like, he had the password.
Did she say Sirius Black or say a man?
That's what I'm trying.
I thought it was left kind of vague. And that's why it stuck out.
Oh, sure enough. End of chapter 13. Sir Cadogan, did you just let a man enter Gryffindor Tower?
Mm-hmm.
Certainly, good lady.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
See, so it's never explicitly said that, like, he let Sirius Black through. He's just like, yeah, I totally let a guy through,
Yep.
And, like, he was there for the fat lady when she was attacked, Yep. So, like, I don't know. It just, it's not adding up to where it was Sirius Black as we know Sirius Black to look like coming through the painting. Almost like Sir Cadogan knew it was somebody. He wasn't familiar with them, but nothing kind of like set off any sort of internal warning system of like, hey, this is a guy that we probably shouldn't let through into the house.
Yeah, I think the professors are probably at the point where they are not really expecting Sirius to be able to get that far.
Right.
They have all their normal protections around Hogwarts that they've mentioned briefly a few times. Not too many specifics, but like he can't apparate into the castle because there's protections.
Yeah.
And then the Dementors outside as well.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's not supposed to be able to get by them, although he obviously has at least once before to get out of Azkaban. So, but yeah, it's. I think up until this point, they're not expecting him to be able to get all the way onto the grounds, into the castle, and then into the dormitory because you need the passwords.
Right. There's a lot going on here.
Yep.
A lot of mysteries. We've had a couple run-ins with boggarts. We know
true.
They are capable of disguising themselves as something else. And I can't imagine that he... I don't know, Matt. I'm having a hard time believing what I think I'm being told I'm supposed to believe, and that is that he just walked through as Sirius Black.
Sure.
So, I'll just leave it at that. Security trolls. I'm fascinated by those things.
Yeah.
I don't know what security trolls look like. I don't know what to expect from security trolls. But it makes sense. I like it. I could dig it.
Yeah, it's like they tell us they just kind of walk around and grunt a lot and they have big clubs, but I kind of get the sense that they're a little more with it than the troll we met at Halloween a couple years back.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of wandered in, was kind of doing his thing and just wandering around. But the security trolls seem to be a little more cognizant, and they
have a purpose.
Yeah. They know what they're doing. They know what they're supposed to be doing, and they're on guard duty.
Right. Now I remember mentioning like how funny I thought it was that like the troll that we met first time around had pants on.
Yeah.
You know? So now I'm imagining these security trolls like in full on security outfits. You know?
Mall cop.
Yeah, Paul Blart style, you know, definitely probably don't fit like
sure.
You know, they're ripped at the seams because they're so snug on these giant trolls. Funny visuals. Ron's story. I'm not sold that Ron is telling it, like I said, the way he saw it, the way he thinks he saw it, or the way he remembers it.
Yeah, and
it's very exaggerated.
That's the thing with perception, and that's what I was saying. It quickly turns into a fish story. It's like, I caught a fish this big, and every time you tell it, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And it's because we get the line, for the first time in his life, people were paying more attention to him than to Harry.
Yes, he loves the attention.
He absolutely loves the attention. He's eating it up, and he's gonna just keep telling the story. And you know, it only makes sense every time he tells. It's got to be bigger and better, keep people interested.
Yeah, and not only like with just like in comparison to Harry, but like his older brothers who, you know, have always been, you know, top of the class, everything.
Yep.
And then the twins, who everybody knows the twins for their antics and being who they are. And he's always kind of just drifted in everybody's shadow, as far as like his older brothers are concerned. So like you compare that and then his friendship with Harry, and he never is the center of attention. He never does get, you know, the people, anybody clamoring to hear what he has to say or hear his stories or his side of things.
Yep.
So he's enjoying it. I think he's playing it up subconsciously. Like, I don't know if he's intentionally over explaining and making it sound more grand than it was, or if it's just he's building it up in his own head type of thing.
When you think about it, though, too, it's a 5-second encounter tops that he had. If it's he woke up, and I don't know about you, but when I am woken up in the middle of the night, it takes me a couple seconds to realize where I am and what time it is and what's going on. And so in that time, I'm thinking that's when Sirius would run away. And so Ron at best just gets a glimpse of him. So he wakes up and sees the face, and then it's gone.
Right.
Like, that's his story. But he's telling it over and over again, and I'm sure it's he's working it up into a 2, 3, 4, 5 minute story. Like, there's only so much to tell. So yeah, I definitely think he's exaggerating.
Sure.
And like, you've I don't know how much you've seen of like reports on like eyewitnesses and studies they've done and how not accurate they are. And it's just another situation. Like, it was dark because it's the middle of the night. He was woken up, so he's probably out of a deep sleep, and it just, there's not much you can attribute to being accurate in this situation.
Sure. Yeah.
In the first place.
It's kind of like that old viral video of the eyewitness of the leprechaun in the tree. I don't know if you ever saw that or not.
I can't say that I have.
Okay. Maybe look it up. There's an old viral video. It's several years old now, like back when like, viral videos were starting to be a thing.
I was going to say, when you said old viral video, I'm like, well,
Yeah.
that viral videos have only been a thing for so long.
Sure,
So.
like when they were just like becoming a thing.
Sure.
There was like this news report, and there's this guy who was insistent that he saw a leprechaun in the tree in his neighborhood, and it's the funniest thing. But it's like he probably saw something. Was it a leprechaun? Probably not, But like he's just so convinced, he's definitely exaggerating it for the camera for the news story. But like you could tell that there's a part of him that like is starting to believe like his own tale that he's starting to tell.
Definitely.
So funny stuff. Neville getting the howler.
Yeah.
That poor kid.
Or Neville.
I'm starting to feel really bad for him. Like he tries so hard, and I'm glad that he's had like one shining moment, with Professor Lupin. But this kid, just he has it rough.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, I have a question, and this was not pointed out by me. This was pointed out by Val as we were reading together. She's the one that is reading. She likes to do all the voices and whatnot. And exaggerates it, and she does like the facial expressions that like I feel would probably be happening in the movie on certain instances. She's always had a problem reading Hagrid's speech, right?
Yep.
It's very rough English, to say the least. But she pointed out, like, he writes this letter, right? And his writing is not the broken English that he speaks.
Okay.
Which is fascinating that he seems to be well more versed with the pen and paper than he is speaking.
Well, I would say that my writing is a lot better than my everyday speech, especially on the spot.
Mm-hmm.
Partly because you have more time to think about it if you want to.
Sure.
I mean, in his note here, like, he probably didn't spend too much time on it, but I would still say that just the fact that you have to take the time to write it out gives you enough more time to think about it,
mm-hmm.
that it's not going to be as rough as just off the top of your head.
I guess sometimes I still associate like the way he speaks with him not finishing school, like not being fully educated, to the point of like what most wizards are. At a young age being expelled and then, basically just, caring for wild creatures and that kind of stuff. So like I've always associated with that. So like I would assume that would go hand in hand with how he was able to write as well.
But I mean, I think slang terms and the accents and abbreviated words that he uses, I think he knows in his head what he's saying,
mm-hmm.
even if that's not how it comes out of his mouth.
Mm.
So when he's writing it, I think that it comes out a little bit cleaner.
Sure.
Than if he were speaking it.
Right.
Like if he were to read his letter, I think it would sound just like he normally speaks.
Sure.
But when it's written, I would agree. I don't find that too odd. I would bet that the vast majority of people's written is cleaner than their speech.
Fair enough. I guess when you're reading his dialogue, whether it's him speaking or him writing and somebody else it's it's tough because you're reading it as Hagrid, regardless. But it's tough.
And I also think as we go through these books that his accent or whatever you want to call it lightens up from what we got in the first book.
Yes, I would agree with that.
So I mean, I think that's part of it too.
Sure. It was a little rough in that first book.
Yeah.
Especially like
very,
the first
very
encounter
heavy.
with him.
Yep.
Whew. That was that was something else. So what's for dinner at Hagrid's, Matt?
Was this the bath buns?
Dead ferrets and bath buns.
Yeah.
Bath buns for the people? Question mark? Harry and Ron didn't quite seem to possibly agree with that.
Well, yeah. So this is capital B bath buns, which I don't know too much about them, but I know there was a city named Bath back in the day, and I kind of wonder if this is where like they came from, Bath.
I just did a Wikipedia search on this.
Okay.
We're doing real up-to-date research. And I felt confident in doing this, thinking that it wasn't a Harry Potter exclusive term that I was going to spoil myself. Because 99% of things in these books I'm not allowed to look up.
It's true, but the food stuff is typically... I think she may have even talked about this from time to time. It's stuff she grew up with.
Sure. Bath bun is a sweet roll made from a milk-based yeast dough with crushed sugar sprinkled on top after baking. Variation ingredients include enclosing a lump of sugar in the bun or adding candied fruit peel, currants, raisins, or sultanas.
Okay.
So it's like a pastry.
Yeah.
Similar to a hot cross bun, if you will, but a little bit more dessert-y than a hot cross bun.
Sure.
So, pictures look good.
Yeah.
But Hagrid's cooking is questionable at best, apparently.
And I think that's mostly what they're going after. Like, they've tried to eat Hagrid's food before, and you kind of stay away from it.
Sure. But the dead ferrets... Boy, oh boy, that sounds like cuisine. Our dear friend Buckbeak is dining on those things.
Yes. Those not necessarily for human consumption.
No. I don't think Buckbeak would let anybody near them.
Probably not.
Even if you wanted to try one. So, but dead ferrets, man, that's like it feels like dead rats or like dead squirrels. Like ferrets is a very specific animal to be feasting on, you know.
But Buckbeak is a very unusual creature, so
it's very true. It's very true. I guess I more
appreciate worms
appreciate
like lettuce, hippogriffs like ferrets.
Sure. I guess I just appreciate the more eccentric description of what it would be eating instead of like a generic squirrel or rodent or rat, you know, or something like that. Like the easy go-to could have been something along those lines, and she's just like, let's go ferrets. That's an unusual thing to be feasting on. So this whole meeting between Hagrid and Ron and Harry, the basic point of it is to kind of look from another perspective as to what Hermione's been up to this whole book.
Yep.
You know, we've been seeing Hermione's story through Harry and Ron.
Yep. Absolutely.
And she's still a mystery wrapped in an enigma. I have no idea what's going on with her, but she's definitely been the odd man out in the trio this book specifically.
Yeah.
Harry and Ron have teamed up over and over again. She has been left out.
We saw it even more in the beginning of this reading in chapter 13. Like I even made a note when we Harry with the Crookshanks Scabbers incident. We were coming off of that, and Harry basically sided with Ron.
Right.
And I made a note. It's like, is this the end of the trio? Like she snaps. and it's like, just leave me alone. I'm just gonna do my thing.
Right. But we haven't had much reason to sympathize with her at all. You know, from what we know, her cat ate Ron's rat.
Yep.
We assume. You know, she's trying to not sabotage, but she's being overprotective about Harry and his new gifts that he's getting. Like, she's still clearly worried about them, but she's going about it in a way that's upsetting the two. And, you know, her and Ron are not really on speaking terms anymore. And, like, Harry isn't even reaching out and comforting and making sure she's okay. Like, he's all on Team Ron right now.
Yeah.
And that is driving a wedge between their friendship.
I kind of assume or picture that this is Hermione going back to her old self.
Right.
I think I get the idea that coming into Hogwarts, she was the nerdy girl who always had her nose in a book, sat in the back of class and didn't talk to anybody.
Right.
And so it was weird when she became friends with Harry and Ron, and it took them forever in the first just to get to the point of being friends. But it was at the end of one of the other chapters. Was it after they met Fluffy for the first time? Maybe where they said, like, there are some things you go through, and afterwards you can't help but be friends. Right. With the people you went through, and like meeting a 3-headed dog is one of those, or something like that.
Yeah.
And it took her a while to get out of that mode and accept them as friends. And so this is just her reverting and going back to the books and back to being her quiet self. And this is Hermione before Hogwarts, I think.
Sure. But at the same time, like, we are seeing it from Hagrid's perspective, and we are seeing that she isn't just okay with being alone. Like, she is craving interaction, social interaction, and she's needing friendship from somebody, and she's been turning to Hagrid for that. And I suddenly have this moment of, you know, I've been mad and confused about, like, her cat along with Ron and Harry. I've been very concerned about, like, her workload that she's doing in school and, like, whatever secrets she's got going on with McGonagall. She hasn't been a likable character. And I hate to say that, but she hasn't been, you know?
Yeah.
She's been distant. She's been off-puttish. She hasn't been there. But then you step back and you read it from this perspective now, and it's like, no, she has been there, but they haven't been there for her. She's needed something, and whatever's going on with her, maybe she's not able to tell them or explain it, but she is still needing them. And because they're not understanding that, because they're stupid 13-year-old boys, like every 13-year-old boy is, she's needing it from somewhere, and she has relied on Hagrid for that. And it's like, that's why I like Hagrid, you know, like he has been there for Hermione. He hasn't made a big deal about it, but now he's like, he sees how much it's affecting her and hurting her, and he's like, I need to talk to these stupid 13-year-old boys and, you know, snap them into shape here, because this is ridiculous.
I absolutely love this little speech from Hagrid, because we've seen it time and again. If there's one thing Hagrid knows, it's all about friendship and loyalty.
Yeah.
I bring it up every time between Hagrid and Dumbledore. There's a reason Dumbledore trusts him, because he is super loyal.
Right.
He's never going to break that. He will always be his friend. He will always be super loyal. It's what Hagrid does. It's what Hagrid knows.
Yeah.
And that's not something he need to be taught. It's built into him, and he can now share that with the next generation.
Yeah. Ron's being super stubborn about the cat, and Hagrid's like, is a cat being a cat? Like, yeah, it sucks, but, you know, what did you expect having a cat and a rat together? And is is all of that worth the friendship that's being sacrificed here? And it's not really clear how Harry and Ron kind of walked away from the situation, like what they felt, how much they understood. Like in my heart of hearts, I want to know that like what Hagrid said got to them, but it's not perfectly clear that it did hit home quite yet, because like the Ron Hermione beef like is still going on. It's still making me super uncomfortable each time it's brought up. Like it hurts more and more, and now seeing it from Hermione's perspective, like it really sucks. Like I almost want to go back and reread the book and come at it from Hermione's perspective, you know, because each time she is kind of made to be the bad guy in the situation as far as Ron and Harry are concerned.
Okay, because we're seeing it from their perspective,
Right.
like you said. That's every book. It's Harry Potter and
but there's a lot more going on, and like I would love now with this insight, you know, to reread it, and especially all these specific interactions that they've had, and kind of try to put myself in Hermione's shoes about how she's feeling and how she's interpreting each situation that pops up.
Yeah,
because it would be much different, I think.
I'm sure you could read it differently.
Yeah. So, but that
my
whole thing
favorite
made me feel good, and it was needed.
Yeah. And it basically ends with my favorite line from this whole sequence, because Ron is still on about if she'd just get rid of the cat and speak to her again.
Mm-hmm.
And Hagrid replies with, well, people can be a bit stupid about their pets.
Yes, Hagrid. Yes, they can.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was, we don't have full resolution between the trio. I fully suspect it will happen. I hope it happens this book. I really do. I don't want to go into the next book still on...
We got a long time to go.
...shaky grounds, but I need some resolution. I think this is a good first step in repairing the bridge between them. So, zooming off, Hogsmeade.
Yeah.
Before we get
back
to
to Hogsmeade again.
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
We're heading to Hogsmeade.
Trying to get there.
Neville.
Poor Neville.
Wrong place, wrong time, like always.
Yep.
He just... that kid knows how to just stumble into things he doesn't want to be involved with.
Yeah. I just had to stop myself from writing poor Neville in my notes like 5 times during these 2 chapters. I'm like, okay, if you're going to comment about Neville, you got to come up with something other than poor Neville, because that's all, every time.
We just need to make t-shirts,
Matt. Really, dude?
Poor Neville. Just he's so innocent. Like he's just strolling along through the hallway and just happens to run into Harry, you know? Like he's not actively looking for anybody. He's not trying to get into any mischief or anything like that. He always happens to find him. So their interaction in the hallway, Snape comes, you know, and Neville and Snape don't exactly get along. Harry and Snape don't exactly get along. Snape and anybody really don't get along. This brought me back to a question that I think I've asked many times, but I guess I'm still confused by, and maybe it's just Snape being Snape here. But there seems to be an issue with Harry and Neville just hanging out in the hallway. And from my understanding, from how you've explained it and other people have explained it, Hogwarts is just open for kids, you know, like other than like the off-limit places that are specifically off-limits.
Yep.
It's a school, like you could roam around, like especially in the daytime, you know, if it's not like super late at night when you should be in bed. It's kind of just open for the students to be doing their things, you know, unless they're supposed to be in class or whatever.
Yeah.
There shouldn't be any issue with them being in a hallway.
Yeah, I would think of it as a college campus.
Yeah, right.
You can wander around the grounds. You can wander around through the buildings.
Sure.
I mean, you're not going to walk in on someone's class that you're not in.
Right.
But they're not doing that. They're just walking through the hallways.
Sure.
It's open. It's free. You can do that.
But Snape made it seem like it was a big deal. Like they shouldn't be there. Like they were breaking some sort of like unwritten rule about like loitering in a hallway or something like that. And I again, maybe it's just Snape being Snape, but it constantly makes me think that there are more hard set rules about where you can and can't go, when you can and can't go amongst Hogwarts that I don't know, that I'm curious about.
No. And this, I would say, is where the title of the chapter comes into play even a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Snape has a grudge.
Right.
And if Snape ran across Malfoy in the hallway, he'd look the other way. He doesn't care.
Sure.
If he ran across Cedric Diggory in the hallway, he probably wouldn't care.
Right.
He sees Harry in the hallway, he's going to do something. It's like,
sees Harry and Neville in the hallway? Oh, it's on.
You seem suspicious.
The famous Harry Potter.
Yes.
So, okay. Yeah, it's just... Every time I think I have clarification about, like, curfew and, like, how they're able to roam about Hogwarts, like, something like this happens that completely throws off how I know Hogwarts to be, so...
I would also go on the other side of things, and if McGonagall ran across them in the hallway,
mm-hmm.
she wouldn't care.
Probably not.
If Flitwick ran across them in the hallway,
sure,
he wouldn't care. But it's specifically Snape running into Harry.
Right. I guess maybe I just need that mundane interaction for it to finally cement that it's not a big deal. Because the only time we get those interactions,
I think
is when it is
if we but if we have that interaction, you're almost not going to notice it.
No, but
because it's not a big deal.
Matt, I would pay good money for just one line of like, Flitwick walks by him, says hi, and like moves about his business. Like, done. End of story. Like, I'm like, okay, cool. Like, everything's on the up and up here. Everything's kosher. They're not breaking any rules. Everything's okay. You know?
Sure.
That's all I need. But 100% those interactions happen every day of Hogwarts, nonstop throughout the day. That's all that happens throughout that entire castle, all the time. But we don't ever get that in the book because it's not important. Nobody cares about that kind of stuff except me. I care about that little stuff. And I just need like one instance where it's just like, this is the most useless sentence in these 7 books. But for Josh Brown, who's needing clarification about like the rules of Hogwarts, like this is super important.
Okay.
Because the only time it's brought up is when it's made into a big deal that they shouldn't be somewhere.
Yeah.
So, that being said, we go to Hogsmeade.
Yep.
One thing I want to talk about. Not one thing. One thing that struck me as hilarious.
Okay.
The small little baby owls.
Yes.
Local delivery only.
Yep.
They're not good for long flights, Matt.
Nope.
They are just up at the block and back.
Yep.
That's their range.
And that's exactly why that line's in there.
It's so good. It's so good. So unnecessary. Like that's an unnecessary thing, right? That adds nothing to the story at all.
That
except
adds humor.
That
adds humor.
And more explanation about like, you know, the setting and whatnot. But it's just so good. I love that. I got super excited though, Matt.
Yeah.
Shrieking Shack.
It's back.
It's back. It's happening. Here we go. We're going to the Shrieking Shack. We're going to find out what is in the Shrieking Shack. Why do the ghosts of Hogwarts not even want to go into the Shrieking Shack?
Yeah,
why would the ghosts even be going to the Shrieking Shack?
That struck me as odd too.
Do they even leave Hogwarts?
That was my thought. Like they go to Hogsmeade. They leave the castle. What?
What do they do to Hogsmeade?
Yeah, it's not like they need to buy anything.
No.
Yeah.
It was more, I think, like explaining that like whatever's in there is so frightening that like even the ghosts don't want to be a part of it. Like, you know, the ghosts that are having Death Day celebrations and all this stuff. Like, it's so bad, whatever it is, that like they wouldn't even touch it.
You see, and that's what I found odd. Like the first line sounds really odd by itself.
Mhm.
Even the Hogwarts ghosts avoid it.
Right.
But then when he clarifies and says, I asked Nearly Headless Nick, he says he's heard a very rough crowd lives there.
Yeah.
And no one can get in.
Right.
So like that makes more sense to me. It's like, okay, it is haunted by something so bad that the Hogwarts ghosts avoid it. Fine. But it just still seems weird to picture the Hogwarts ghosts even trying to go there.
Sure. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I mean, Hogwarts is a fair. I mean, obviously, like within walking distance or whatever, but it's a fair distance from Hogwarts. It takes Harry a couple hours in the secret passageway to get there.
Mm-hmm.
It's not something. Even if you're a ghost, it's going to take you a while to float there.
Right. Right.
So I guess just the imagery of that first statement is really odd.
Yeah. So what's living in there, Matt?
Haunted stuff.
We were so close. I thought for sure we were gonna find out.
It's the most haunted dwelling in Britain.
I have two theories.
Yeah?
Yeah.
What would those be?
Dementors. I feel like they need a place to regroup when they're not on patrol, right?
Sure.
Second thought, and I'm saying this may shock some people, but I am saying this with absolutely zero context whatsoever, other than the fact that I know the name, and that's it. Death Eaters.
Okay.
And that's only because I own a Death Eater wand, Matt.
Yep.
That is my only reference point for what a Death Eater is, or who they are, or what they are.
I don't know if have we ever mentioned that on the podcast before?
Maybe. I don't know.
Okay, so just to clarify, this is a wand you picked up from the Wizarding World of Harry Potter.
It spoke to me, Matt.
The first time you were there.
The first time.
So this was this past summer before we started the podcast. Like it's actually like when we talked about starting the podcast.
Yes. This was definitely before anything was decided. So I was still of the mindset of I don't need to know anything and I'm not too interested in finding out about anything.
Yeah, you didn't pick out this wand because you knew what it was.
Nope.
You had, like you said, no context.
Right.
You picked it out because it looked cool.
Val wanted a Hermione wand, so I was able to get that for her. But I felt like I needed a wand. And, I can't pick the wand, Matt. The wand has to pick me. And that was the one that was speaking to me that day, was the Death Eater wand. Yeah. I got some sideways looks for some people when I purchased a Death Eater wand. It definitely doesn't have the most positive connotation associated with the name. But I have no idea what a Death Eater is, who a Death Eater is, or anything. I have no clue whatsoever. Yes. Other than I own a Death Eater wand for reasons I cannot fully explain yet, Matt.
Yeah.
One day I will fully understand why that wand picked me.
Yeah, eventually you will know what that wand means.
Yeah. So, with that being said, I feel like the Shrieking Shack is the perfect dwelling for a Death Eater. That just sounds like they go hand in hand.
All right.
No idea. I really have no idea. I was just disappointed not to actually get to it and find out. It's just a tease, Matt. This is the third reference to it in this book.
Is it the third?
Yeah.
I was thinking the second, but maybe I'm missing one. You would definitely be paying attention closer.
Yeah. Yeah. So close.
Yep.
Ron ran into Malfoy and his two Goonies.
Crab and Goyle.
Mm-hmm. But
Got
Ron
'em.
wasn't alone.
No, not really.
Yeah. Harry using the invisibility cloak. Okay. The moment that it was described that he was using the invisibility cloak to walk around, I was just like, this is not good. This is a recipe for disaster. One, he shouldn't be there anyway.
Yeah.
But he kind of gets a little cocky sometimes using the invisibility cloak.
Very true.
You know, like it's the safety blanket that he has. And everything was going fine. Then, you know, once this little fight broke out with Malfoy, essentially, I knew this was going to be bad. This was not going to end well.
Yeah.
Because if anybody's going to rat out Harry Potter for being where he shouldn't be, and using a magical item such as a invisibility cloak, it's going to be Malfoy. You know?
It makes sense.
That would be the last person Harry would want to be discovered by.
Yep.
So it just, everything, the writing was on the wall for this just to go downhill quickly. Now, it was going good for a while. Malfoy and his cronies got theirs. But it was too good to be true, Matt.
Yeah, never quite works out the way he wants it.
No, again, dumb 13-year-old boys.
Yes.
The reoccurring theme of all of these books is just dumb, X amount of years boys. Like, that's... I feel like going up until the end of it, that's just how it's going to be.
Those are your new titles for the books.
Yep.
Harry Potter is a dumb 13-year-old boy.
Pretty much. I mean,
Year
really,
4, Harry Potter is a dumb 14-year-old boy.
they kind of break down to it so far.
Okay.
You know? It was a fun little scene. You know, Harry and Ron definitely needed to get out some frustration on Malfoy. But Harry getting caught.
Yeah.
Bad news.
Especially since, his shortcut doesn't seem to be so much a shortcut.
Right. Yeah. So when he got back, Snape was waiting for him.
Yep.
Yeah. I get why it's used so much, but Snape consistently referring to Harry Potter as the famous Harry Potter is definitely wearing thin on my nerves. You know, because he's so snide and so smug when he says it. It's just it's degrading. It's a bully tactic, you know.
That I was gonna say that's exactly why he uses it.
Yeah,
because that's what he's doing. That's why he picks on him every chance he gets.
Right.
He Snape is essentially abusing his power every time he sees Harry Potter.
You're right. One thing that we know about Harry Potter, though, regardless of who he's having some sort of confrontation with, is you don't talk about Harry's dad.
Yeah.
that does not lead down a road most people want to travel, from what it seems.
Yeah, we saw that at the very beginning of this book, I believe.
Yep.
With Aunt Marge.
Yeah. So thankfully, it didn't escalate to the point of Aunt Marge, but you could tell that if he had kept up, things would have been happening.
Yeah, but they really went at it. Harry very much lost his temper.
Mm-hmm. Which is nice. It's nice to see him kind of stand up for himself. And it's sad that it took, like, Snape talking illy about Mr. Potter. But, it's nice to see that Harry is capable of standing up and defending himself, especially against an authoritative figure like Snape, who is capable of, getting him in trouble. Like, he can go to Dumbledore with things, and, whether or not Dumbledore is going to pay Snape much mind, I don't know. But
granted, yeah, just about every other professor would be on Harry's side, probably.
Right. But still, like, Harry still acknowledges that threat is real.
Yes.
But Snape finds the map.
Yep.
This map is sassy.
Spectacular.
Oh my goodness. I love this so much.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. It was talking back and putting down Snape as Snape was trying to use his authority on the map.
Yep.
Like, didn't he say like he was like the master of Hogwarts or something? Like, he
yeah.
used some ridiculous term that was like, going a little too far there, Snape. Professor
Severus Snape, master of this school,
commands
you to yield the information you conceal. I'm like, no, you're not quite the master of this school.
You think so?
You work here, but
but like the map talking back and just kind of giving Snape a taste of his own medicine was hilarious, because it was just the map writing to him.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like all four of the people involved, like that had certain things to say.
Yes, and just the way that it was done. I mean, we're just sitting here reading this, but you can picture it so well, and like picture these four characters interacting with one another, and just it's so good, so good.
So remember my crazy theory from last week?
Yeah.
About the four people and who I thought might be behind these nicknames of people for these maps. I was trying to pinpoint telltale signs of what they were specifically saying to Snape and who I thought the people might be, and I couldn't figure anything out. No, there was no connections. But I was studying it. I was like, does that mean anything? Who would say that specifically? And I couldn't find any connections. Could there have been? Maybe. But as far as furthering my theory, this did not help at all.
Okay.
Sadly. What I am very confused about is Snape's ability to summon Lupin through the fire?
Yep.
On a whim?
Yeah.
How does that work?
So, this particular instance is a little bit odd.
Uh-huh.
The specific situation, the specifics of what he does, as far as I can recall, are never quite used again in the exact same manner.
Okay.
But it almost seems to be a forerunner of something else we see. So, okay. Do you remember how it was written? Did anything stick out to you?
He threw something into the fire.
Yep.
Which made me think of like the flue powder.
Yes.
Right. But that's how to transport yourself.
Yeah. And you get the idea that at least that's what Lupin used to show up, because seconds later, Professor Lupin was clambering out of the fireplace.
Sure.
Or wait. There. A large shape had appeared in it, revolving very fast. Seconds later, Professor Lupin was clambering out of the fireplace. So that's kind of the description we got of how Harry was traveling through the flue network. So I'm pretty sure Lupin used the flue powder to get there, because it's the fireplace, it's the powder, it's spinning fast. In my mind, this is either Snape used flue powder, or at least something very close to it, somehow related, maybe modified so it works differently within Hogwarts or something like that. Because what we do know, Well, I shouldn't say that. What I know, I'm not sure if you know it yet, but the flu powder doesn't necessarily work with all fireplaces.
Okay.
They have to be part of what they call the flu network.
Sure. We've been over that.
Okay, we have that. We've
Mhm.
covered that. So they
I think you explained that in with an explanation of it not really spoiling anything for me.
yeah. So, but because there are so many protections around Hogwarts, I can't imagine that their fireplaces would be part of the greater flu network.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm thinking they're somehow modified to kind of have their own network. Think of it, I guess now that I'm talking about it in terms of networks, think about it as like an internet,
Okay.
right? The flu network is the internet.
Okay.
Obviously, the internet can't transport people, but
Yet.
yeah. But if you think of the flu network as the internet,
Mm-hmm.
you think of this other network inside Hogwarts as like a LAN or local area network.
Sure.
You know,
Yeah.
it's something that works on a smaller scale within a confined area that only certain people can use.
Yeah. Okay.
But it's going to connect different locations the same way the internet does, essentially.
Okay.
So basically, that's how I'm thinking about it. So I think he probably is using flu powder. The only confusing part is that he just kind of speaks after he throws it in there,
Right.
which is the weird part that kind of throws it off, which almost makes me think it's a precursor to things we see later.
Okay.
In how the flu powder and the flu network is used.
Sure. I guess I was confused by, did Lupin have to be near a fireplace when this was done? And
I definitely think so. I think,
like, what if he wasn't? Like, what if he was like just walking down the hallway and Snape did this? Like, would he just like look like a fool? Like, Harry's like, what are you doing,
I don't
dude?
think it would have worked. I think Snape threw that in there with the intention, whether he spoke it or not, that he was connecting himself to like the fireplace in Lupin's office.
Okay, sure.
And he was assuming that Lupin was going to be there, or otherwise, because they don't have telephones.
Right.
This is his telephone.
Sure.
And so he's calling Lupin's office, and if Lupin wasn't there, well, then yeah, nothing would have happened.
I just want to see like the blooper reel of like Harry just sitting there watching Snape do this, and like Lupin not showing up, and Snape's just like,
yeah,
okay, let me try that again. You know, it's just like Harry's.
I think the odds were in his favor though, because all the other students were still at Hogsmeade.
Right.
I mean, Harry was supposed to be back at the castle, and like the first and second years that don't go to Hogsmeade would be at the castle, but the most of the professors didn't have anything to do unless they went to Hogsmeade too.
Sure.
But they're just going to be at the castle. They're probably in their office grading homework or something.
Yeah.
So I think the odds were in his favor that Lupin was in his office.
Okay. Just, it was a little confusing because that was like the first time that we've seen somebody summon someone else.
Yeah, it's definitely a unique circumstance, and definitely the first time we've seen it.
The traveling through the fireplace didn't freak me out as much as just making somebody appear through it. It's very clear, very obvious that Lupin knows much more about this map than he's leading on.
Sure.
Right. He knows what's up with this map. You know, I appreciate that he has Harry's back here.
Yep.
He is very supportive of Harry. Like he knows that he needs to get him out of Snape's office like ASAP. But like he does it in a way that's not confrontational with Snape. Like he's still keeping his relationship intact with Snape.
Yeah. Lupin is just so smooth.
Yes.
Everything he does, from his teaching to his interactions with other professors, whether he be insulting them or working with them, to his interactions outside of the class with Harry and such.
Mm-hmm.
He's just so smooth with everything he does.
I guess I was just more expecting Snape to put up more of a fight, but like he didn't even seem that concerned with like trying to argue or outrank Lupin in any way.
Well, I think he knows more of Lupin's background as well.
Mm-hmm.
Like he working with Lupin this entire year. He's been making that potion for him. He just has a better understanding of who Lupin is and where he's been. And so I think he kind of understood that Lupin wasn't going to stick around and argue with him.
Right.
It's just Lupin said it was done. I'm going to take Harry and go.
Sure.
He's not going to stop him.
Yeah.
I mean, Snape's it doesn't seem to be the guy who's going to put up a fuss, especially in front of other teachers.
Right.
Unlike we saw with McGonagall and Trelawney. Like Snape's not going to do that.
Sure. Yeah. He kind of sticks to himself.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, Snape will abuse his power over students, but he's not going to get into fights with teachers.
Sure. Especially in front of students.
Yes.
So, I don't know. Lupin definitely knows more. What exactly he knows or how he's involved in any of this, I don't know. I would caution you to look back to my theory from last week. Again, this chapter didn't help further that theory in any way, shape, or form. But I don't think it did anything to toss it out the window either. So, it's still on, my friend. It's still on.
All right.
And then the chapter ended up with finding out that Buckbeak lost his trial and is sentenced for execution.
Yep.
This is not good, Matt.
Yeah.
Especially because it was kind of alluded to earlier in the chapter that to execute I don't know if it's a hippogriff or just any of these creatures, they cut it off before they finished the sentence, but they were definitely leaning towards cutting off their heads.
Yeah.
I don't like the sound of that. That's not okay, Matt.
I don't have much to tell you.
Yeah. So that's it. That's the end of our reading this week. Here's what I promised to go over and why I'm so frustrated by the end of this chapter.
Yeah.
We have a few more chapters to go, but there are so many things that I am desperate for answers for. Here's the list.
Yeah. Just to be specific,
mm-hmm.
We have 8 chapters to go.
I thought it was less than
that. We just finished 14. They're actually 22.
That's right. Okay. For 17,
yep.
I was thinking 20. So
yeah.
Okay. So a little ways to go.
Yep.
But still, Matt, we need to find out Sirius Black, what his deal is, who he is really, why he's there, why he's trying to kill Harry Potter, how he's been in the castle, like the whole Sirius Black mystery needs to unfold. Okay.
Yep.
We need to find out what Hermione's deal is.
Okay.
Why she's taking so many classes, what her little secret with McGonagall is, why she's been so distant this book, what's going on with Hermione. That's a big deal.
Okay.
The Crookshanks and Scabbers murder mystery. We need to figure that out. Crookshanks is an integral part of the story in some way, shape, or form. I don't know yet, but that stupid cat has something to do with all of this.
Okay.
Let's see here. The whole Buckbeak situation, the hippogriff, that's going to hopefully, I would imagine, be resolved or further explained in this book.
Well, so you're just not accepting anything we've been told, essentially.
No, nothing.
So like Scabbers wasn't eaten by Crookshanks.
They never found the body, Matt.
Buckbeak isn't going to be executed.
Possibly not. No.
Okay.
No. I'm on to JK here. No, nothing. These are just breadcrumbs, Matt. We're spinning our wheels here, going in circles.
All right.
We need to find out who wins the Quidditch Cup this year, because that's a big deal.
Sure.
I feel like there's more going on with Harry's dad. How that, all ties into the Sirius Black issue and all of that. There's more to that story, I think. Hagrid, like, is he going to last as a teacher? Like, what's going on with Hagrid? Maybe that's not even resolved this book. I don't know. Hagrid's story is kind of not integral to this overarching story, I think. And then the big one that I am consistently thinking about and trying to figure out is the Marauders map and the 4 nicknames of the people involved with the map and who they might be and why that's important to all of this. I think that's a big proponent of everything going on here. And then finally, Lupin. The mystery that is Lupin. Who is he? Who is he really? Who was he really? What's his MO here at Hogwarts?
Sure.
But more importantly, Matt, the biggest question of the entire book is how are we going to get rid of Lupin in order to have a new teacher for the next book?
Oh, you don't think we can keep a teacher for 2 years?
Not a chance.
No?
Nope.
Okay.
I would love it, Matt, but I firmly believe that this is going to be the running gag of the series is the new Defense of the Dark Arts teacher each and every year.
So now you're just going to figure out how to kill him off.
Or not necessarily kill. I wouldn't go that far, but like, where does he go? Where does he, does he transfer?
Okay. I was going to say we killed the first 2, but I guess we only killed one of them.
Right. Yeah. Lockhart, He didn't die.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He just needed treatment.
Sure. So I think there are many routes we could go as far as getting rid of a teacher.
Okay.
But I definitely feel like we need to get to that point to where Dumbledore is once again putting an ad in Craigslist for a new Defense of the Dark Arts teacher. So,
well, if that's where he's finding his teachers, I think we have an answer.
Yeah, you're looking in the wrong place, Dumbledore. So we got 0 answers. I still don't know about the Shrieking Shack. Nothing. We know nothing. Absolutely nothing.
This makes the future all that much more fun, right?
Yeah, I guess so. Do we have any emails?
We do.
Okay.
We have 2 more emails. And I got thrown for a loop because Alex sent his in early, so it's not the last one.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Weird. But actually, I'm going to read this one first because it came in the middle of the week.
Okay.
This one is from a new writer named Allie.
Hi, Allie.
Says, hello, guys. I'm Allie, and like Matt, I am located in the Eau Claire, Wisconsin area.
Hey, how about that?
Yeah.
Does Allie know about the world famous wood fire chicken?
I don't know.
Allie, let us know.
Yeah. I love the opportunity to reread one of my favorite series with the added bonus of the book club style and the funny predictions that come from an older first-time reader. as opposed to someone who is the same age as the characters as I was my first time around. I promise I'm not calling you old, Josh.
That's okay. I am. Trust me, I am.
But I'm going to stop there and say I think she makes a very good point. That combined with the email I read at the beginning of the show, you being an older reader, plus taking it two chapters at a time and taking time to think about it and discuss it, and it's just a completely different experience.
Sure.
Like, even if a 12-year-old sat down and read this book and was told to discuss it, they may not come up with all the theories and questions that you have.
Right. Well, I think the biggest part of it is like a 12 or 13-year-old that's reading this for the first time would not be able to identify that these are dumb 13-year-old boys. Like, that would just be like the normal, like nothing's wrong with them, like they are being completely rational right now.
Yep.
And all the older professors are totally out of line in every way, shape, or form.
Sure.
But no, I've been there, done that. These are dumb 13-year-old boys.
Fair enough. She goes on, I want to start by thanking you guys for the time it takes to do something like this. Not only do you take the time to record, but you also take the time to edit the show before releasing it to the public. I have finally caught up to where you guys are, and I'm dreading waiting for weekly podcasts. Not listening in real time. There are moments I was yelling at my phone because you were talking about stuff I wanted to comment on, or at times correct, but I knew I had to wait until I got current and could not be the annoying, repetitive girl. I find it hilarious.
Alex could be the annoying, repetitive guy, so we could definitely have an annoying, repetitive girl.
There you go. We don't mind. I find it hilarious that you are so... She makes so many good points here. I find it hilarious that you are so annoyed with the recap in chapter 1 of each of the last 2 books. But Josh gives a recap of the podcast every episode. I'm Josh, the muggle who has never read, and Matt is my guide. I can see you doing that at the beginning of each book, much like J.K. Rowling. But I doubt there are many people who start in the middle of the book in the middle of a series.
Valid point. However, I will point out, in the world of podcasting, people discover new podcasts all the time. And yes, it makes 100% sense for new people finding this podcast to start at the beginning of one of the books.
Yep.
But we have seen the numbers, Matt, and we know 100% that is not how that always works.
Yeah, and that still blows my mind. Because me personally, when I'm looking for a new podcast or when I find a new podcast, it may not be the smartest thing to do, because I do not want people to do it with our podcast, because I still kind of regret the first 6 episodes. But me personally, when I find a new podcast, I need to go back, start at episode 1 and work my way through. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like I feel like I need to do it from the beginning.
Sure.
Catch up from the beginning. I need to see how it all started.
Right.
I can't jump into the middle. I can't jump into the latest episode. I have a really hard time with that. Yeah. The only time I do it is if like someone recommends I listen to a specific episode of a podcast.
Sure.
Then it's like, okay, it's about a topic I was wondering about, or I wanted to listen to, or they think I'm interested in, and I'll listen to that episode. And then I probably won't listen to the rest of the podcast ever again. But if I'm gonna get into a podcast, I need to get it from the beginning.
Right.
And so it just blows my mind that people will jump in and just listen to the latest episode. But like you said, we've seen the numbers and the way the numbers run. Yeah, a lot of people do go back. We've heard from some of those people. I mean, someone like Allie, who was catching up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we do. It's a fail-safe. Like, if somebody is checking out the podcast for the first time, maybe they just listen to the most recent episode, decide if it's something that they would want to listen to, and then would decide to go back and start from the beginning or start wherever they choose to. But if we just start off every podcast with the assumption that everybody listening is already a listener, then we are going to immediately keep out new listeners who want to be included in the discussion, who would come in feeling like they've already missed out and it's not for them. And we don't want to do that. We want to include every single person, whether you've been there from day one, whether you're just listening now for the first time, which, to be honest, anybody that's listening to this show for the first time had the worst intro of any podcast we've done so far. So
they'd be super confused.
Yeah.
It's like, is this the right podcast?
Woodfire
Okay.
chicken, what are we talking about?
Yeah.
But I appreciate Allie's point.
Yeah. She says, I've also wondered if you consider reading 3 chapters a week versus 2 as you do now, seeing as the books grow significantly in length, starting with Goblet of Fire, the 4th book. That will allow you to keep the once-a-week schedule, but not be stuck in one book for quite so long. To that point, I will say, yes, we've considered all that. And as much as, like, I remember looking at when we were getting into book 3 and looking at it, it's like they added chapters. We'll still be able to do 2 chapters a week, but it's going to take us, what I say, like 5 months no, it can't be 5 months. Like 3 months, like 2.5, 3 months.
Sure.
To get through it. And that felt like a really long time.
Mm-hmm.
And I know it's going to get worse in the next book. Like maybe that is the next book I was thinking of. That's going to take us like 5 months to get through it, I think, at our 2 chapters a week. But yeah, if we go 3 chapters, the episodes are going to be so long.
They would either be long or they would
We're
start
not going
feeling,
to cover everything.
Yeah, they would start feeling like the movie versions of the books, where it's going to be the condensed highlights, like the big events, and that's all we're going to talk about. And let's be real here. I have a sneaky suspicion, Matt, that people love hearing me talk about flubberworms and fudge flies, right?
Yes.
We don't have that discussion if we're trying to fit in 3 chapters at a time.
Yeah. Yeah, I think 2...
Save the fudge flies.
2 works out very well. And I know we've talked about this off air. I've looked at book 4 already. I haven't looked past that yet. But book 4 still keeps the chapters at a reasonable length. Mm-hmm. It just adds
There's just more
chapters. Yeah. So yeah, we're going to be stuck in the book for a longer period of time, but it's nice that the length of the reading won't change too much, and so the length of the episode is going to stay about the same, and that's not going to affect that. And that's really what I was worried about. Because, yeah, we can't make these episodes any longer, and we can't start skipping stuff. It just wouldn't feel right.
No. And honestly, like, we appreciate all the feedback. We have this conversation probably once every 2 weeks about, like, how much we're doing per week, if we need to change it, if we want to change it. And it is something that we think about probably way more than we should. Like, it may seem that we're kind of on autopilot and just going about 2 chapters week in and week out and not putting any other additional thought into it, but we are. We actually are. It's just we continue to fall on the same decision of this is the best for this show as we see it. If everybody out there that's listening decides to revolt against us and refuses to listen until we do 3 chapters a week or like change the format in some way, shape, or form, then obviously we'll listen to the audience. But when it comes down to it, it always feels like it's just the only reason we would be doing that is to get through the books quicker, because people are so antsy to like have me continue my journey at a quicker pace.
Yeah.
And yes, I want to do that, but that's not always the best solution. So we think we're doing okay. If there is a genuine reason for doing it other than just to speed it up and get through it quicker, then we are always open to the possibility of it. But we just can't rationalize doing it any other way at this point.
Yep. She continues then. Well, okay, I guess I'll ask you first. I know you've mentioned this podcast, but I don't know if you actually listened to it, the Gilmore Guys.
Oh, yeah. I do not listen to it.
Okay. Well, I
because it would break my heart, because it would be something I would totally do.
Yes. But she does say, you guys remind me of Kevin and Demi from the Gilmore Guys podcast. And that's one of the highest compliments I could ever give.
Awesome.
So I'll take that.
Absolutely.
If
I could be
I'm glad...
just a little, like a morsel of entertaining as a duo called the Gilmore Guys, then I am doing something right with my life.
Awesome. I'm glad that Josh is enjoying the series as much as he is. Matt has far more self-control than I possess. I'm glad you guys have embarked on this journey, and I'm even more excited that you've chosen to take the rest of us with you. Thank you.
No, thank you, Allie.
Yes, thank you, Allie.
Also, Matt's self-control and restraint is only due to the fact that we don't do this as a video podcast.
Works out much better that way.
I don't know if I've told you this, but I was definitely talking to Val about this, where there are times in the show as we record that I actively am trying to figure out when you're muting and not muting your microphone based on things I'm saying. Because I feel like there's some times when I'll say stuff where you either back away or you mute your microphone because you're either like laughing hysterically at me or you're like trying not to like yell at me for something or to ruin something for me. So I'm always trying to pick out when I'm ranting and raving about something, what your level of interaction is on your side of the mic.
Well, I'll tell you this. I don't mute my mic unless I'm like coughing or something.
Sure.
So my mic tends to be on the whole time. I do sometimes back away from it and maybe give like a huge sigh or something exasperated type of noise, but sure. It's still there in the background if you listen really hard, I'm sure. But I do actively kind of watch my tone and inflection when I reply to you. And purposely try to change it up from time to time.
See, that's what I'm afraid of, is like sometimes you throw me off.
Yep. Because I do not want to give you anything.
Between you and Val, like I don't know how I'm not able to crack you guys after 3 books. But it's incredible that like more things haven't been ruined for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, on to our final email.
It's that time of the show.
The one, the only, Atari Alex. It says, Dear Josh and Matt, well, winter has come and gone from Texas as quickly as a person apparating from a room. Last week, when you posed your question about fire and butterbeer, it was a balmy 70 degrees in Houston. Then this past weekend, the temperature plummeted to below freezing. At the time of writing this email, we're back up to 68. So while the cold weather may not have stuck around for long, I took advantage of it while I could and snuggled up under a blanket to enjoy some light reading.
Speaking of which, hold on. Wasn't he like super snarky about the Twitter poll, the Muggle poll last week, and was like, why would I need hot butterbeer when it's like 68 degrees outside?
Yep.
Yeah, That's what you get. That's karma, Alex. I bet you wish you had that warm butterbeer then.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of fire, the first thing I wanted to talk about is the mythology of salamanders. It's quite simple, really. Salamanders like to live in rotting logs, which also make for good firewood. So when people in olden times would burn the poor salamander's home, the salamanders would run away as to not be burnt to a crisp. The people observing such a phenomena came to the conclusion that the salamanders were born of fire. Kind of like the I'm going to slaughter this, and he's going to call me on it. Daenerys dragons?
Daenerys.
Mm-hmm.
From Game of Thrones.
I am not familiar with them because I don't watch Game of Thrones.
Yeah,
that would explain it.
One of the main characters with the blonde hair.
Sure.
Yeah, you've seen her.
I probably have.
Yeah.
Don't know. I don't know any of their names though. So
sure. 6 seasons and I barely remember their names.
I think there's a guy named Jon Snow or something like that.
Yeah.
Name I can remember.
Nothing, Matt.
Yep. So a magical salamander that hangs out in a fire isn't much of a leap from there. Second, I need to present a counter-argument to Josh's counter-argument about Quirrell's teaching ability. Yes, he allowed himself to be swayed to the dark side, which is uncool. But I think the old do as I say, not as I do line applies to that situation.
Maybe.
Maybe.
I still feel like yeah, never mind. Look, if I get into it with Alex, this will never end. So
Sure. As for this week, I think we have another superb couple of chapters here. There's plenty of excitement with the Quidditch match. Although you may have an opposing opinion, I think. And plenty of tension between the Grim, Ron's rocky friendship with Hermione, and Harry's stupidity for sneaking out of the castle.
Mm-hmm.
I also felt a new emotion towards this book that I've never experienced before, which, having read it many times, was a strange experience. I wasn't sure which Quidditch team to root for. Having never been officially sorted into a house, I always sided with the team of our protagonist.
Sure.
But now that I belong to Ravenclaw, I was really conflicted about which team I wanted to win, despite already knowing the outcome. I really didn't like that feeling, and now I sort of regret taking the sorting quiz. Last but not least, I found a typo. In my edition of the book, on the bottom of page 285, it reads, Snap picked up the Zonko's bag. So that was weird, especially because it's not an original print of the book. We bought it at least 5 to 6 years after the book was released because the first copy we owned began falling apart. I thought I would bring it up to see if anyone else has had the same typo.
I do not have my book.
Do you happen to have your... You don't have it handy?
No, it's downstairs.
Yeah. So I did look this up in my book, and mine definitely does say Snape. So it's not in my copy. So I don't know what happened. My copy, I believe, is the first printing of the paperback. So the book was copyright in 1999, but it says first Scholastic trade paperback printing in September 2001, and I believe that's what this is. So my copy is fairly early yet. If his was 5 to 6 years after, yeah, it could have been through a couple printings, but I still don't know why it wouldn't have been a copy and paste.
Right.
I'm not sure what happened there. Who is retyping this whole thing and missing the E? So I can't explain that one.
Sure. The world may never know.
Yeah. But that's all we have from Alex this week.
Oh, thanks, Alex. I hope the weather stops changing so drastically on you.
Yep.
And also, that's what you get for saying such disparaging remarks about warm butterbeer. So, check yourself next time, Alex. That's the show, Matt.
It is.
I feel like I said, we just kind of spun our wheels in the mud and went in circles these two chapters.
A little bit.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Yeah. Next week, maybe we'll get some answers.
I think it's pretty safe to say I looked at this earlier this week because I kind of had the same feeling that Val did, and it's like, yeah, we still have a lot to uncover, but I think like each of the next sections gives us something at least.
Goodness, it better, Matt. It better. I look forward next week. We'll be back with episode 29. We will be covering chapters 15 and 16 of Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. With that being said, you could find me personally on Twitter at The Noise with a Y. Please be sure to follow the show on Twitter at Tales from GH. That's where you'll find the weekly Muggle poll, any changes we may make to reading schedules, any random circumstances where my internet randomly goes out before recording and we have to push it back a day. Things to keep you up to date with the show is definitely going to be found on the Twitter account at Tales from GH. And as Matt said at the beginning of the show, we do have a Patreon. It allows us to do more cool things for you guys, the community out there, interact more, and do giveaways and all kinds of cool stuff. So if you'd like to support us over there, you could do so at patreon.com/Tales from Godric's Hollow.
Just a quick note on that. We are getting pretty close to our first goal over there.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
So, but regardless, whatever happens over there, nothing will change with the show as you know it. So no worries, my friends.
Yep.
Matt, where can people find you at?
Well, you can always find me personally on Twitter at As a Matter of Matt. Or if you want to write a little more long form, you can get a hold of me or the show at talesfromgodricshollow@gmail.com. And as always, that is something that only I read. Josh does not have access to that account anymore, so feel free to write away whatever you want.
One of these days, I'm going to hack in and get all the deepest, darkest secrets.
Yeah.
Probably not.
No.
There's easier ways to go about that. Thank you all for listening. This has been another fun show, Matt. I look forward to next week's show, as I do every week. For the listening audience out there, thank you for continuing to listen. If you're brand new, I'm sorry about the wood-fire roasted chicken tangent, but sometimes the guy's just hungrier than he expects. For everybody else, this has been fun. We'll do it again next week. Till then, Muggle out.
Mischief managed.